right, well, thank you for attending the scheduling coaching. This is going to be one of many coaching and other initiatives that we're going to have, especially for the project management and project engineering departments. What we're probably going to discuss today won't be real big detail about software. What I would really like to do from my position is to pick a topic that's going to be driven towards scheduling and really do the high level philosophy about it. And I would expect that the other directors and senior VPs will take that particular topic and then drive it down to be more specific as it applies to software. To give you a little bit of the why. Many of you have in the room have either been here less than 2 years, and I will tell you in late 2017, we were going through some very trying times with projects and with management of those projects. There were some financial blunders, but most of all, there were scheduling and managing time blunders. And when we had done the postmortem as a team then, it was a much different executive team in 2017 and 2018. The common thread that continued to come up was our management of time. And so I think for most of the project engineers and other positions in the company, contracts and everything, if you really look at what we really manage, money is the one aspect of it, but time is another that if you really want to set Alta apart from what is the value of using us, we have to fundamentally be able to manage time. You can always try to get more money or squeeze it out of a sub or do a change order, but I can't buy more time. And so the best sources that you'll find, even in the sources that you've used in the past, are ones that do manage time very well. So in the past, we probably didn't focus enough as a team to drive down the fundamentals of scheduling and teaching scheduling throughout the organization. Back then, it really sat with only about 4 or 5 people in the company, and that we just know was not going to be able to scale as we grow out of state. We really need all team members to at least have a grasp of the fundamentals of a schedule. And then over time, with your experience as your positions, you'll play with the software and you'll get more prolific at it, because the only way to really master it is actually do it. I mean, you can do a test, you can watch a YouTube video, we can teach you how to make the colors of the bars blue and green, but until you start making it on your own, I think that's really where you get the actual technical part of applying it. But when I came up to trade, somebody told me the fundamentals. I had to make mistakes and go along the way. And really the fundamentals of making a schedule were really tied to the basic life cycle of an entire project. So that speaks a little bit about the goal. The why is we failed pretty miserably the last 2 years on scheduling. And I think that has to be driven throughout the organization, from the superintendent all the way up to the senior vice president. I mean, everybody should be focused on managing the time, which you see the companies investing heavily in software that we can manage that together, transparent throughout the whole organization. So what I wanted to go through initially is to hand out a little description of what pre-construction is, because I know we're just starting to really recognize the value of pre-construction. A lot of wonderful posts on Workplace about the pre-construction meetings we're doing. But pre-construction as well is more than just the course of construction timeline. Meaning that's the meat and potatoes of a construction schedule that you first touch, is from demo to flooring, the course of the construction. You know, really that's not difficult to really assemble, because you know you got a demo, you know you got a frame, you know you got to do drywall, that's all. But we failed miserably in 2017 and 18 because we were communicating to the customer with poor dates of execution of course of construction, with no idea what the pre-construction was being done to influence that execution. And so I just wanted to teach you a little bit about these steps and the cycle of the plans. So when you start to make your schedules, when you move forward, you're just not starting at demo and going to final building inspection. There's a whole nother layer that's before that. So I got a couple of examples of bar graphs that show you the life cycle from doing due diligence to getting financing to doing government compliance. There's a huge step that all these steps must be done before the demo hammer even swings. But depending on your customer, your client, and where they are in that life cycle really depends on how your schedule is structured. So I wanted to kind of walk through that because I think we've just formed a pre-construction department, which we're trying to fine-tune that. Both directors are really taking a lot of effort on at least communicating in pre-construction so the team knows and taking the time to talk about the details of the job. What I also wanted to teach everybody as well is a little bit of the definition of pre-construction. So if you could turn this and hand this around and take one. Briefly read through that. It'll take you 5 minutes, and then we're going to go over it paragraph by paragraph and how that applies to us, our structure, and how we will going forward working on training and what I'd like to see both directors do to focus on the scheduling part of things. I found this just off the web. It was some construction site that I found, and this was the description of really the fundamentals of pre-construction. So I'd like everybody to take some time, read through it, and then we'll do an out loud read. Go ahead, Andrea, read through the first paragraph, and I wanted to just take a moment after each paragraph is read to maybe have a little open discussion about it and let me either clarify. We've got some very experienced people in here that can actually lend some insight to each one. So with that, the floor is yours.
Pre-construction services are used in planning a construction project before the actual construction begins. These services are often referred to as pre-construction or pre-con. It is a modern practice considered to be part of the construction project management, which is the overall planning, coordination, and control of a project from inception to completion aimed at meeting a client's requirements in order to produce a functionally and financially viable project.
That's correct. Anybody have any questions with that? The first paragraph?
Just a comment. So one of the most important things I pick out from here is financially viable. I can tell you we just had somewhat of a pre-construction meeting with John Mobius from Crate and Barrel, and right now they don't even know if they can do the project based on a conceptual budget. He said, take a look at this, put together a budget, and then we're going to send that to corporate to see if this is even something that's feasible to do.
That's a great point. I'm going to talk a little bit about that when we get to the next segment, which is going to be the life cycle of the drawings. So who wants to take the next, a little bit shorter one on the next one?
I'll do it. In the long-established design, bid, build method of construction project delivery, a project would be entirely designed before being built. This resulted in a package of plans and specifications which form the construction documents. The owner would then request bids or tenders for the project and award the project to a successful bidder, who would then build the project.
Is that correct? Any questions regarding that paragraph? I'm going to explain the whole thing when we get through it, but I just wanted to make sure that we take our time to read through it because this is the main part. You probably want to know, well, why does that have anything to do with the schedule? If you look on that board, it has everything to do with the schedule. You cannot even get to the course of construction if you can't even identify the elements of a project that you do with what is required in pre-construction. This is the part that I think as a team we focus so much that I need paint submittals, I need carpet submittals, and those are all part of it. But depending on the project, you could have design and engineering submittals. You've got government compliance, permitting, and plan check issues you have to deal with. You can't even get to the course of construction until all that pre-con's done. So I will caution you, when you go to make a schedule, again, don't start at just demo. There's a whole life cycle of other departments that are in front of operations that have to be in unison to do these so that you can convey to a customer when it can be delivered, because sometimes it either can't be done in their timeline, or it can't be done on budget. And so this is the reason why I wanted to spend this much time on pre-construction, so you understand it, because I didn't really understand the pre-construction portion of it when I came through my career, because I was just doing kind of projects that really didn't involve a lot of pre-construction. But as we grow, we do more commercial work and things of that nature. I think everybody throughout the organization has to understand how important pre-construction is. It's the success of a project. Success of a project. Third paragraph, who wants to take that one?
I will. Or you want to? Okay, I'll take the next one. You can have this one.
No, I'll fight with it. Often the early feasibility studies and design development is supported by construction cost estimators who prepare cost estimates for use in the decision-making process. This process starts with planning and is supported by conceptual or order of magnitude estimates Design then starts with a schematic design, SD stage, followed by a design development stage, DD stage, and culminates in a construction document state.
That paragraph was something that I did not learn until I was doing it for over a decade. And why is that so relevant? Is that you probably wonder, why is Rick, the CEO, doing Excel spreadsheets? It's because typically in the life cycle of a project, from the inception, from the cost analysis, I have, in my experience, been the one that can actually extract scope out of a concept. I mean, schematic design is like the stick figure, right? You don't know what eyeballs, you don't know what hair, it's just a head, it's a stick, it's schematic. I think this is important because you sometimes make scheduling based on the very, very beginning of a job when you just have an idea. Developers do it. Plot of land, where I build, they do schematic designs, they do renderings. There's nothing that's construction documents yet. But in a schedule, you have to reflect that time, sometimes take months or years to do. So you can see that there's a lot of steps before we get to contract when they do the exhibit of the documents. Those you're typing are CDs. That's the very end document. But you started at SDs with schematic design. Then when the conceptually will work, then you'll jump to design development. And then from design development, you'll jump to construction documents. So that timeline is a real important place to be in because it will tell you a contractor that can handle it from schematic to CDs, you're probably more in the negotiation stage. If you live in the CD stage, you just throw it to the street and whoever knucklehead GC is the cheapest. I don't want to be in that realm. So the more we can learn the whole life cycle, the better educated you are about it, the more return of value that a customer sees in us because we know the entire life cycle of the project. So next paragraph. Somebody take.
In the design bid-build system, there is construction bidding process where the contractor's construction cost estimators prepare the estimate and form the bid based on the construction documents in an intense pre-bid period, typically measured in weeks.
You keep on going. You did that really well. We'll wrap it up.
Pre-construction services grew out of construction cost estimating to encompass the other activities in planning a project. The intent is to work with the project's owner to help deliver a satisfactory project that meets the owner's objectives. In addition to estimating, the pre-construction team participates in design decisions, evaluations, studies, value engineering, value analysis, scheduling, constructability, reviews, and more. Design costs, permitting, land acquisitions, and life cycle costs may also be evaluated. In delivering pre-construction services, general contractors or construction managers may also be negotiating for project construction services. Often this may be accomplished by agreeing on a guaranteed maximum price, GMP, for the project. The firm then delivers the project. Typically, the owner and the firm share any cost savings realized during construction.
That's a lot of information in that, but you can see what the elements of pre-construction, and listen, team, it changes project to project, customer to customer, sector to sector. I would say probably on the retail side, we probably deal a lot more with in pre-con with drawings that aren't complete. On the commercial side, you're totally already into CDs for the most part. All right, it's already pre-engineered, but there could be elements that you will have to engineer and part of it, but that's part of the due diligence expected of a general contractor. When you view a general contractor, I know you think about the pickup truck at Home Depot, but a true GC is almost a construction manager, and the construction manager is managing all of those other institutions, subcontractors, engineers in your scheduling to get to the end product of a job to be executed. But I thought that was really important because I think right now as a team, we're trying to figure out how we're going to utilize our pre-construction. We're trying to figure out where is the handoff between estimating to pre-construction to operations. We don't have that finely tuned yet, but you can see that there was a little bit in that text that touched a lot of different people. And so over the next coming year, we're going to try to reestablish what the pre-con is so it's most efficient for us in our structure. And that may change, but right now I can see that everybody kind of understands the importance of it. And anytime you have pre-con, it doesn't mean you're going to eliminate all the risk, but it mitigates quite a bit of it. At least you discuss it to find out feasibility of the owners, so the owner's expectations are met, and our cost associated risk with our subcontractors. So the next portion I want to go down and drill down is the actual life cycle of the drawings that were briefly read by Dave. So we hand this out. This is a paragraph on each cycle of schematic design, design development, CDs, estimating, and construction. And I want to put up some examples of 3 particular projects that speak to each one of those sectors, so you kind of understand the differences. You don't have to read the whole thing, but maybe read the first schematic design paragraph. You can pull up, for me, open up SIGA. So as you read through that, I'll just say that I hear a lot in construction. The drawings suck. They're incomplete. I don't have this, I don't have that, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? That's construction. If you're really educated on the cycle and you can actually build up a SD or DD, you become pretty damn valuable. You'll find that customers come to you before their CDs are even done because you're that sharp.
You know,
Because
back in the day,
You can do it.
prints, you only got one set of prints, and the prints had to be right, and they had to be on, otherwise it was a long, exhausting process to do slip sleeve. Now I think with today's technology, the ability to update it instantly, architects get really lackadaisical about, oh, I'll just plug this general note here and that general key note there.
But you can see that it takes so much time to get to CDs that a lot of times, we can see this with a lot of our customers. They want to execute and roll out a program now, and what do you tell them? You got to get a permit. It's going to take this much to get, materials. All of these things that are pre-construction, sometimes owners don't see that. They've got a bank account full of money. They just want to write a check. And money, you can't get things to get pushed just because of money. You really need to get the whole life cycle of the job. So the initial is you got to get a schematic design set up. So I wanted to show you what a set of drawings that I usually deal with, because schematic design, when you see on the pipeline, for those of you who are starting to learn about the pipeline and you see budgets, or you see something on the pipeline that's 10%, they're probably Rick's budgeting high level off of SDs, meaning they're not complete, they're typically only one sheet. So if you can just pull up that pricing plan, if you can, I would hope that sometime in the near future that I can pass on some of the budgeting things that I can do to other members as they get more prolific in their career. When you're going to get schematic designs, they're usually just a one-page floor plan with notes. There is no details. You don't know what the color of the carpet is. You don't know what the wall types are. You don't know how much air they need. It's totally high-level pricing. It's usually called a pricing plan. Usually it's just done to see what exactly is said in the first 3 paragraphs of pre-construction, just to see if it's even feasible or they even have enough money to do it before you go spend money to go to CDs. If you're in SD schematic design, you're really probably only hiring an architect, right? So that's the first person with a degree. It's usually a designer or architect just doing a one-page plan. As it starts to move to DDs, now you have to start involving the engineers. And the engineers tell you how much air, how many lights. So you can see it depends on where you are in the life cycle of the job, how detailed your schedule must be if you're really going to convey it. And especially as a contractor, when we are responsible for some of that design, it isn't always we will have complete CDs that even have engineering. Sometimes we're responsible for engineering. So although the architect may have construction documents, there is no mechanical, electrical, plumbing, or landscape, or civil, or structural. And so they look to us to manage those sources. Your pre-construction gets really, really big. And
She's gonna get her iPad.
we're having technical issues.
We are.
So I thought this was really important because when I first did retail stores, didn't do much pre-construction. We worked off a napkin. You can see like Greg's jobs, for example. A lot of Greg's jobs, they're not CDs. What are they at best? They're design development. It's a handbag store and it's got a little layout, but there's no engineering. I don't know where the circuits for the electrical are going.
They're on these.
But we've done so many of them, we kind of get accustomed. We know how they're going. If that vendor wanted to engineer it, they're gonna have to spend $20,000 more, and it's gonna take them 3 or 4 more months. So sometimes it's good to have this talent because you weed out what I call all the other knuckleheads. Because if I can work from SDs and DDs, that is the value of Alta. That's the why. Why do you go to Alta? I heard at dinner last night with a customer at Macy's saying that the leadership here, you guys know the whole cycle of the job. I know when I come to Alta, I will not have any issues. Now, if you're going to try to get more value or get more people involved in bidding, then you got to have better documents. Then you can't do it from SDs. You can't even do them, quite frankly, from DDs. You got to have full CDs. And I think we struggle sometimes being competitive on the CD realm because when an owner gets CDs, he can literally throw it to the international world, whoever's low. But as you pull that up to SDs, who can I partner with that can help me budget it? That's why a lot of customers come to me and go, hey, could you come up with a conceptual schedule? Could you do a budget for me? I do those because when I'm working on those things at the SD and DD level, that's future work that's coming maybe 2, maybe 3 quarters in front of us. If you're in CDs, David's bidding it now. The bid turns in 2 weeks. So there, it's all about the low number. Bring up SIGA. David, why don't you go ahead and read the next section in design development? That way, when I go to the drawings, we're going to go to 2 drawings right at the get-go.
All right. At this point, we will take the schematic designs you selected, as well as any requested modifications, and revise the design as necessary. We will also update the cost estimate we provided during the schematic design phase to reflect any changes we've made to the initial design. We take our clients' budgets very seriously and continually strive to provide accurate estimates throughout the early stages of design. This phase may require additional give and take as we work with you to finalize the details of the design before moving into the next phase.
Perfect. Actually, that came from a residential architect from his website. That's why he's speaking to the customer. He's actually stating his value, which we do a lot of. You can tell how much I budget. I do a ton of budgeting, but if you can scroll this thing down so you can see the whole page. So this is an example of a job that I budgeted over 9 months ago. And I was asked to budget this to conceptually see if they can get the money approved for this client. It's about a $3 million tenant improvement for an insurance group in Glendale that is part of 33 North Brand. We're already doing TIs in there. So this is all I get. As you can see, I don't have elevations, I don't have specs, I just had a ton of notes. And so when I'm in the schematic design, this is exactly what it's saying. It's just a layout with some notes, with some intent. It's not to DDs yet, to design development. What David just read is that once I budgeted from SDs, in the design development stage, we'll try to tweak that because the owner says, I don't like the kitchen there, the cabinet, it's part of, if you just put it as a residential kind of example, you're designing as you're going, if you've ever done a remodel at your house or seen it, or somebody that you know in your family, that this is really how architects are structuring in its phases, that SDs is where Rick lives. I live here. When you get to CDs, that's Sasha, that's Andrea and David. They don't need help for me to estimate this. I usually get here because I'm dealing typically with architect meetings, usually commercial brokers, who are going to do the funding. Because how this cycle works is the building is not owned by an individual. This building is owned by a REIT, which is the acronym for Real Estate Investment Trust. Every skyline in every city that you see predominantly is owned by a pool of money, a pension fund. And how that gets managed is, and then they hire a CBRE or somebody. So when I get asked to do this, it's because this building wants this floor occupied so they have income generation in that building. Makes the value of the asset go up. So before they go spending money on an architect, taking it all the way to CDs, they have to really determine how much is this going to cost me. This is what Rick does. In the cycle of a job, this contracts would not be touching this. It would only probably be in our departments. It's going to be probably estimating. But why this is important, if SIGA came to me and says, I'm going to give you a job, but this is all I have, I would have to build in the pre-construction of my schedule all of the elements to get this engineered, permitted, designed. That has nothing to do with demo or carpet yet. There's just a ton of work, which gets you as a contractor, bumps you up a sophistication level. Right? Because when you get to CDs, as I said, you can get anybody to build it. You can go to Home Depot and hire a bunch of people, here's the plan. But when you're thinking about it, can you help me? this is where we want to be because predominantly this is negotiated work for us when we're at this level. People come to us because we're smart. You can help them identify things that are costing. So you can just see it's brief. It takes a long time for me to make these. I'm really prolific on Excel. I usually have to do a full-on spreadsheet, tab by area, so that the client knows what the cost of elements are in each one. On what David just read on DDs, I want you now to open up Mission Ridge. So this is the next step. Now SD's behind us, say we go along, and this is an example of a design development drawing. And now you can see the one 15 days ago. Let's start with the cover page and open it up. This, you can see it's totally in the design development stage. And in the design development stage, you start to get elevations and pictures. So now they say, Rick's SD budget looks great, let's go to DDs. How much is that gonna cost me? Architect's gonna say, I need 50 more grand. We write that check. Then they produce this. You do kind of a page turn one by one. You start to see the level of detail now. Now it's identifying the entire site, where the building is. Keep scrolling. Just keep scrolling. We're getting renderings of the assets. Keep scrolling. My idea here is just to get you a visual of, I don't know what SDDDs are, but you can see how much more advanced these are than a one-page map. So a one-page map, Rick has to do it because I can visualize this in my head at that stage. So you can see here's an isometric. So they've got everything laid out. This is a big concrete wall we got to build. When I did this budget off the DDs, they all wanted to know how much this wall was going to cost them. And so I don't have any details other than in DDs, go to the next one, the architect, keep going one more, right there. The architect kind of drew, here's what we think structurally you need to build that wall. Look at all those piles. That wall was about 500 grand, and that was just to keep the sound off.
Yeah.
But they wanted this on Mission Ridge, which is the one that we gave the paint job to. That's why we gave Mexican food on Monday, because we gave Sam Rama that job. But my point, you can see the level of detail now when you get to DDs. Now you've got something to work off. I could actually I could build off of this. These aren't fully done to CDs, but if the client says, I like your budget, can you do it? Could you just engineer this whole thing for me? We could do it. I'd have to find a structural engineer. I'd have to find a civil engineer. I'd have to find a landscape architect. I'd have to find a mechanical, electrical, or plumbing that's required. Each one of those names has a college degree. So the architect doesn't do everything in a drawing. That's why you see A sheets, M sheets, E sheets, P sheets, L sheets, S sheets. Each sheet letter is a different person with a different degree. So when you make schedules, you can see that I'm just not doing paint and carpet. I'm managing 6 people with a degree, sometimes a designer, sometimes a specialty consultant for kitchens, elevators, whatever it may be. You can see how much pre-construction when you build a schedule, there is a ton of work that has been done on that project if you're already at CDs. That's why customers get really frustrated when they see change orders. And they want to know why, because I thought we picked all of this up. It's just like when you get a change order to build a pool, you did a remodel, and the contractor keeps charging you for it. It's really frustrating. You could never have a perfect set of drawings. You really can't. But it can be, it's there to communicate the design intent of what the owner wants. If you are a very smart builder, you can pick up the things that aren't there. But I consistently hear, I don't have good drawings. I don't mind working with drawings that are bad. I'm educated enough that I know what the design intent, that I communicate with the customer, and I can make an effective schedule to go around it. So this was just an example. I just finished this budget for them, and this whole thing was about $5 million. They want to do all the restaurants. I think they're repossessing this asset. They want to sell it. So when even we're still getting to DDs, I'm still dealing with the hedge fund money guys, asset managers. This is in our commercial realm to let you know is where I spend a lot of my time now. But I do need to kind of teach the next generation to be able to do that. I can give you any advice on take scheduling seriously, try to learn that if you have aspirations to come up, as well as you kind of got to be a little prolific at Excel. And the reason why is that a lot of times, as this customer did here, they wanted to see the price not as a whole number. They wanted to see it in its elements. And so you can't just go get an estimating software. I keep hearing, let's get an estimating software. Why can't we have just a boilerplate proposal? There's so many different proposals that we do at so many different areas of the cycle of the job. You can't make one boilerplate thing. Sometimes it has to be customly made for a presentation in a boardroom. I have to get on the board, basically do this to a customer at a lot of times in the SD and the DD stage. So the next paragraph is CD, if somebody wants to take that one. So CDs is construction documents. Now it's stamped, it's engineered, it's done. Now that's where Marina and Maggie live, full sets of drawings most of the time, especially when it's commercial. So I'll let you read that one, Mike, or Tyler. What do you do? CDs.
By now, we have settled on final design and will begin preparing drawings, notes, and technical specifications necessary for bidding, construction, and permit application. This is the phase that many people think of when they picture the work of an architect, the creation of blueprints. Contractors will use these detailed drawings and specifications to prepare for the next phase in the architectural design process.
That's exactly what we said. You know, as an example, if you've got that, actually pull up Macy's Manhattan Beach. This is a job we're going to be bidding really soon, and I had to study these drawings yesterday. The timing couldn't be better. This Macy's project I budgeted conceptually 3.5 years ago. The director that was there at the time no longer works with the company. They proceeded now to do the business, and I got a call from Peter Giomi, the Macy's PM, who asked me to put a schedule together. So I think I just go to the scheduling software and make a schedule. No, I can't even make a schedule until I understand what the hell I'm building. So for 3 hours yesterday, all I did was look at Macy's Manhattan Beach drawings so that I can get it in my mind what we were actually doing on the project. We're going to get to that too on the next one. So if you just go to the title page, I just want to go to the very title page. When you go to the title page, which is buried in the middle, I'm not going to go through page by page on this cover sheet. On the cover sheet, I just want to show you how many drawings are entailed when you get to CDs. But she's not there yet.
Just
Again, I just wanted to show you the cycle of, you know, one-page map, colored renderings, then to CDs. Most of the times we're dealing mostly with CDs. And CDs would then be pretty much in the course of construction, as you see up on the board, that covers that aspect of the life cycle of a project is the course of construction, which is what you really focus on and what most of the tasks that the PEs do and project management do most of the time, because we don't have a lot of customers that are in the design part or SD and CD part. I think Transwestern is our biggest customer that has that. I think what are they? They're about $13 million of our volume last year. So you can see how many budgets that I prepared to get $13 million. I was working on those jobs in 2018, a year before that. So just zoom in onto the drawing index. So for those of you that don't realize what Maggie and what Marina do, so you can see how many drawings now. This is full CDs now. Look at how many drawings that there are. So from about the A sheets up, that's the architect. So here's the structural engineer. Scroll down. There's the plumbing engineer. There's the mechanical engineer. There's the electrical engineer. If you look at the title block over here on these drawings, it's going to identify each one of those people that did those drawings. From these drawings now, I can tell you exactly how high the wall is, what it's made of, all the finite specifications. That's when you do those drawings, how important it gets to CDs.
It might be a dumb question, but if you have the drawings, do you and you need it to go into that design development, do you give it to any mechanical engineer and say, look at these drawings, tell me what we need to do?
It depends on where the owner wants to put the responsibility of that engineering. A lot of like Fortune 500 companies, like we do work for Macy's, they have their own relationships with architect and engineers. They feel more comfortable to control the engineering themselves. But then you can find a startup like an Uber. When we did all this energy stuff for their scooters, they didn't have an architect. They didn't even have an electrical engineer. They were just calling Ron and David going, hey, I've got this building. I've got a lease brokerage thing from CBRE. Here's the property. I need scooter power for 50 scooters. I need it done in a week. It's like, holy shit. They wanted us to engineer it. So at that point then, we found an electrical engineer, we surveyed, we drew it, we permitted, we executed, and the scooters are all over the United States. So it just depends. It doesn't always lie in the same configuration each time. You will find that a lot of businesses don't like to carry a big construction department. That's a lot of money to have directors and VPs and project managers and project engineers. A lot of companies would just outsource it. So it really depends on what that company or what that client, how they want to structure it. That's if that kind of answers your question, but it's a very good question. It does put a higher level of complexity when the customer wants us to do it. When we have to do it, there is nowhere to hide now, because a lot of times if they do it, you can blame them. The engineer effed it up. They did it, but when it's all you in design build, you represent the customer. You have to make sure it's engineered right. Because when it comes to engineering and you have a degree behind it, that's there, so there's safety behind it. It's designed well. You see failures all over the world in construction, collapses, fires. You know, the fire that was just in downtown LA had no sprinklers in it. Wasn't required, but it's a great question. So that's why you can see that pre-construction is where you should be spending most of your energy as a project manager in PE, is thinking of that. The course of construction, frankly, that's pretty easy to make on a not so difficult job. It's the same thing every time. It's demo, it's framing, it's mechanical, it's plumbing, it's drywall, it's paint, it's flooring, and it's done. But the stuff that happened way before that, you know, what type of paint, where it's going to come from. A lot of times when you're doing designing, you're not dealing with CDs and this many drawings, and you're dealing with SDs. The customer comes to us and negotiates that. So we don't have to bid against other people. But it puts a lot of energy, as you can see the commercial team puts a lot of energy in their jobs. The cannabis industry that we have, it's a lot of energy in cannabis, what Justin's working on. This cannabis is a new industry, and there's all this level of governance that has to be followed. It's just like building a restaurant. It's very complex to do. So anyways, enough about the drawing, but you kind of get the gist of it. The next thing I wanted to hand out, and we can wrap it up, is this next one. Cycle, which is basic elements of a project cycle. And if you look, the color kind of shows where it gets from the study report phase into the operations phase, and every layer that make up that overall cycle. The first bar is the program layer. It's just pretty much a synopsis of the whole time. The next layer, the coalitions layer, governance, I would imagine that's going to be compliance, regulations, entitlements, you know, to get the project off the ground with city government. The next layer then becomes the summary of the project layer. This is where we would probably start and begin to come in if we're at the SD stage. Because if you look below the project layer is the design package layer. Over that time, that's where pretty much Rick's time is spent. You see how early in the life cycle, and looking at the very bottom square, the work execution project layer, that is the course of construction, but I'm dealing with the project, that same project, way at the beginning of the preliminary design phase. So you can see how a schedule would get changed dramatically if you make a schedule based on where you are in that cycle and what documents that you have. So it's a big detailed undertaking. The next one would be the construction package layer. This is probably where CDs are beginning to be developed. And then to what Dave wrote up there, then you have the procurement package layer. This is procure, getting stuff. You know, you need it before you get there. Got to order elevators, long leads. Gets the procurement layer. This is where most of the project engineers deal mostly in the pre-con now, is sitting in that box. I can see a lot of the work that Ashley's doing and all the P's doing, PMs, and they're spending a lot there. And then after we do those pre-con meetings with the superintendent, then you're in the work execution package layer. That's the schedule you are attaching to your subcontracts. So when you look at this on a bar chart, you see how much work is done. The work execution is the smallest piece of it. And so I really see a lot of schedules made that really look ineffective. Because if you're going to sell yourself as being a smart GC, if I only see the course of construction schedule, well, I could have my sister build that. I mean, you know, you got to demo first before I frame the wall. What's after framing the wall? I see in this old house, you got to put sheetrock on, then you got to paint it. It's like, but nobody knows what the governance are. what type of walls. You kind of have to know the stuff in front of us makes us look smart. And so what we're being asked now with an estimating department, and the way we do things is we do 2 types of schedule today. I think somebody in the office named it, which I think was an appropriate label. The first schedule that estimating does when we submit a bid is a baseline schedule. It's not really the one you're going to build off of, but the client asks, prepare a schedule for me so I can kind of see how long it will take. Okay. The next schedule that we make is the pre-con meetings that you see being posted and being very successful in the workplace. Mike and Tyler then do a course of construction schedule. That is the work execution package layer. That's what Marina and Maggie are attaching to our contracts, is that piece of it. That's extremely important because it's where we can be sued, right? The delivery of things. So you can see that before I even start talking about Microsoft Project and how I turn a bar yellow or how to get project information, you've got to know this fundamental first. Nobody taught me this in my entire career until I had to learn it on my own. And I think a lot of times we stay so focused in that little box down there that we don't think of the things that happen beforehand. And I will tell you, the couple of jobs that we failed miserably in 17 were done by good people that were really smart. They just didn't have their powder dry on what the procurement was and what some of the pre-con was to deliver. I think one was glazing, as somebody mentioned. Our team told the customer they can have it in a month, and it took like 2 or 3 months. Our customer lost their customer over that. It wasn't that they were dumb people. It's just that I don't think they thought about the full process, but you have to be very cautious before you raise your hand and say, I think it's going to take 2 weeks to do this job. You know, conceptually it could. Until you know all of the program, the whole pre-con, be very cautious that you have all the stakeholders of a project reflected in your schedule before you communicate that with the customer.
Do we use a procurement log here?
It's pretty much a submittal log, yes. It's done through Procore. That's why
Procore
is going to does everything for you. So right now I'm really dogged about the course of construction schedule. Once our directors make it, it gets loaded into Procore. Because once it's loaded into Procore, then your field superintendent can amend it. That schedule then ties into the meeting minutes, submittal logs, it all ties together. But right now we're kind of at the infancy state with Procore. We're still putting a schedule on the cloud. We're putting some things on Procore, and it's really not going to be effective on communication and scheduling until it's fully on there, because it does it automatically. As the submittal log and procurement gets built, it automatically gets reflected and ties with everything. So Procore's module actually speaks to Microsoft Project. So when you do create it, you upload it in, and it's there. It's pretty powerful. That was a big selling point for us. So, does anybody have any questions with that? It wasn't going to be a very long coaching thing. I just wanted to start with this. I think what we're going to do from this is take some segments of what we discussed today and drill it down a little bit more. And then maybe use some examples of some schedules so that you know. I just think it's important that the entire company, no matter what department that you're in, sees how much complexity is when you get a contract and you bill and you send out subcontracts. There's so many other moving parts that happen, which is the reason, Dave, when you get to Florida, that when you get projects there, it has to get into the assembly line. Because when it deviates from the assembly line, it screws the whole trade up. And you're working now with a group and a team that is going to support you, that you don't have to do it all. Once estimating gets it, and you do the pre-cons and it gets loaded, you can see that we're all working together, a team from finance to procurement to other things. And we're kind of defining what you pointed out, is making sure that those are sitting in the right areas. So I think it was just pretty important for me to communicate that. And again, I learned this at a very late stage, because that's the first thing I wanted to learn, is how to make a schedule. Basically, with software, I was so software driven. You can get anchored on software. You can make an effective schedule just doing it on a notepad. Literally, my mentor would turn a notepad sideways and he put the date, and he would actually do the bars on a notepad before he went to the computer. I see so much time with people learning how to use software. They spend so much time. They spend 20 minutes trying to do 3 bars. Think about just like ingredients on a recipe, right? You're never going to go with all the ingredients and just hell with the recipe, go right at the stove. You got to really think about it. You got to know what the ingredients are. It's very similar to dissecting with a project. And so you have to know these basic fundamentals before you get to a schedule, because I don't like seeing step schedules like that, because I can look at a schedule that just does that and know there was no thought process into pre-construction. And I want to just close with just showing what I mean by that. I know some of you have had the privilege of seeing some of my schedules, and maybe some of you haven't.
There's one on the screen.
Okay, there's one on the screen. Okay, this is going to be brief. From that task up is the pre-construction. Everything in yellow was all the aspects of the job that needed to be either procured, the material order, millwork fabrication, all of these things that we needed to put in the schedule. If you look at how those lines link, which I think I'm jumping a little bit for those who are not familiar with how a critical path schedule, that's what a CPM schedule is. It's the critical path method. How this schedule is different than your iPhone schedule when you set a calendar for a week and a month, it doesn't show you how things link in the month. When you put this in a Gantt chart schedule, if you can just go back, how it listed is at the very top, it's the time. Over to the left, it's the elements. So you can see where you're supposed to be on what item in a given time, and then you can link them. You can't do that on a calendar schedule, like your kid's school lunch schedule. There's no linking Taco Tuesday to Hamburger Day. But when you put it on there, you can see that this has to happen before that happens, before that happens. But a lot of times people just go, oh, install wood flooring. Well, there's a whole lot of, got to get it approved. It's got to get on a fast boat from China and getting that. So when I say I see schedules that are just stair step like that, I can tell you just threw a schedule together, maybe a baseline schedule. But it's not an effective schedule. Your schedule should be pretty large. The top part, this is pre-construction. Right here, submittals. Here's some pre-construction here, some subcontract issuance. I even listed the aspects of what you do with your team. So if you ever need any assistance on learning when we get to that aspect of it, I think Mike and Tyler will have discussions that will probably drill down and maybe take a piece of the schedule. Like if I'm going to continue on some training for your teams, just take pre-construction. Just try to learn that and identifying the links to things. I think this was for Crate and Barrel.
That was Crate and Barrel.
This is for Crate and Barrel. I extracted all this time from, they had an Excel worksheet that just said, I want to be done here, I want to be done there, I want to be done here. I just knew those dates and I overlaid it into there. The point is I listened to the customer. The customer says, here's what I want to do. I would tell them if I try to squeeze it in here, it doesn't work. It's like, it's not realistic. You can't do it. And so, but you would never do that if I just made the schedule on the bottom. What do you hear from contractors? Oh yeah, we can do it. Don't worry about it. Forget about it. We got it. You got to have some facts behind it. And that's what project engineers, their main role in supporting a project manager, is a big part of what they're doing is managing the procurement and delivery, the sub-scope, and the project manager does that and manages multiple projects. So I would really like to see, hopefully by the end of the year before we go to the Christmas party, that at least we get our project engineers more involved in scheduling. Because you have to be involved in it to get it going. You don't have to make complex schedules like this. Sometimes just the simplest schedule. But make sure you put a little pre-con in there. It may not be much pre-con, but just teach yourself that you have to identify pre-construction. And then identify what type of drawings are you working on. Are they SDs? Are they DDs? Or are they CDs? So it makes a big difference on the pre-con side. Not so much the course of construction side, because I actually can build something without a drawing at all. It's still demo the flooring. But when you have to identify pre-con, those are all of the things that you must do, the fundamentals, before you even get to the course of construction. So.
At what point in the life cycle could a client back out? Like if you submit
At any time.
Really?
At any time. That's why you don't work without a contract. Because they can't. I've been in the middle of projects under construction and I'm under contract and they just decide they're out. I was doing a Seattle Best Coffee. I was 3 weeks into it and they got bought out by Starbucks or somebody bought them out. And so I had to gather my costs at that point and done. And we were out. So you can really, it's up to the customer. That's why you see buildings in Las Vegas sit empty for 5 years when the market crashed. They just stop. You see construction projects all over the country that get that way. Funding gets pulled. The economy crashes, banks pull out, they stop. Or there's litigation that can stop it. So literally, it can be pulled at any time.
Most of the time, people right that after the pre-construction phase if they're not.
Sometimes they do it like right in the middle too. Like there was like an apartment complex next to my parents' house that like 4 of them got done, and then there was like a bunch of land that still needed. It was all gated up, and it sat like that for 3 years, and now finally they're done with it. So it can happen at any point.
Can happen at any point.
When are we writing up a contract with them?
Then you get into
And the
more-
SUVs?
It depends. There has been some. Trying to use an example of a customer that right now that we enter into contract anywhere in the SD or CDs. It probably would be Transwestern. It's sometimes in retail, sometimes with the Macy's or Bloomingdale's. Really, it doesn't. There's no sector that ties to this. You could do any sector. It could be medical, it could be aviation, it could be industrial. It's a philosophy. So some corporations have a philosophy that I want value and not even involve GCs until I get to CDs and I get to the work execution layer. Because I want the best value for my dollar, which actually is very smart. The problem with that, it's slower. Okay, if you have a concept and you want to roll it out, especially in the life cycle of a corporation, they've got to get things issued within Q1, Q2, Q3. They've got to get it out. So a lot of times the reason why they involve a builder earlier is they'd rather build a team early to help them through that process so they can be part of the design phase and also be able to control costs. Because when you hear that term value engineering, their vision could be of something that's pretty extravagant, but if you're working with a construction team, could tell you how to achieve that look without spending a whole lot of money. So that's the advantage of being brought in early. Typically, our contracts that we enter in with the customer changes in its structure. If you're going to be in CDs, it's probably going to be what they call a cost plus. You're an agreed upon fee. You have no subs yet because you don't have any drawings, but we're going to pay you. How much is it for your staff for an anticipated amount of time, and how much fee do you want for an estimated value? But when you get to CDs, it's just lump sum. You got it, baby. You got the drawings, how much you want. There's no change orders unless I change my mind. So that's why there's different builder owner contracts, and you somewhat structure your GC subcontracts depending on what type of job you're entering in. But I hope that gives contracts a little bit clarity to all those exhibits. I know when you're typing a million of a day are just blah, blah, blah. But those blah, blah, blah help us if we get litigated against. That schedule is extremely important. I really just cringe when I see anything being issued with contracts with no schedule on it.
So if it's like a day project, I'm assuming a schedule. So where do you define that line? No, I shouldn't issue a contract without a schedule if not one is provided by the time it's requested.
Well, it could be based on size. It really depends on risk. Like if I'm painting a wall, you could, in the minimum when you have a schedule, remember a contract, the elements of the contract is between which two parties, for how much, and when. You don't have to make a big old schedule. Somewhere in there you can type to be done next Wednesday at 5 p.m. I can litigate against that. I can go to court and sue you if they sign that. I don't need some fancy software, so I really can't emphasize enough. Don't let Microsoft Project and Procore cause you. I've done it when you do bigger projects, when you see a high rise, those exhibits for schedule are actually written when that sub has submittals, when they do their testing, when the steel hits the site, when floors 1 through 10 should be erected. You write a specific schedule just for that trade because it's so intense, it's so large that you just don't make a bar chart with 16 divisions on it. So it could come in a lot of different aspects, and sometimes it's just as simple. Mobilize this day, finish this day, sign it. You can write it, but you have to have a timeline because then it's not a contract.
For the subcontracts, in our subcontracts, it has a section in there or about schedule. You don't necessarily have to have a schedule. Maybe they have to adhere to it.
We could type it. But that's a great question. If it gets so small, listen, a $1,500 job, I don't have a lot of risk. I'm going to end up going to small claims court, but you still at least should type something in the timeline on there just to say when it's done. You don't have to do a full-on huge schedule, but you can see that again what I said at the beginning. A contractor totally stereotyped is they're just doing the course of construction. There's so much more that a contractor does that is not even seen, especially as you become a contractor as large as us. We're really a construction management firm because we don't self-perform much, but we manage customers' money and their projects. And that means on the pre-con side, procurement side, we've got to get a little, our capacity there is going to stunt our growth if it's only Rick and 20% of our workforce that have any clue how to make schedule. You're just going to hit a wall. You can't grow beyond it. Your big, huge GCs, they have a scheduling department that are just focused on scheduling. And nothing changes, it goes through that department. That's how important time is, because time is money. If we're 1 week late on a project, our general conditions on the cheap end for a superintendent, a little PE time, it's probably about $6,000. If we're 1 week late, we lose $6,000. And then if you don't document and run an effective schedule, you cannot even go to the customer to even ask for more money if they go, well, you dipshits didn't even give me meeting minutes. You never gave me a schedule. You never showed up to the site. I'm not paying you jack squat. So now you're going to be delayed another week for $6,000, $12,000, $18,000, 24. You can see that if you start running late, you're just eating up your labor. You should have been done at this point. You're not managing your time. It's just like a restaurant. You get frustrated when your food's not here. I hate it when you go to a restaurant and you go in there and the manager didn't staff it right and there's one person managing 20 tables. They're not managing their schedule. I don't care what business you're in, you have to manage time. And we failed miserably in 17 because we as a group didn't manage time as effectively as we could have, and it cost us on a few jobs that we lost quite a bit of money. So again, it's a big top 5 goal of project management engineering to focus training all year on just one thing: scheduling, scheduling, scheduling. So I would encourage you, if you could take some time on your own, go through some tutorials on project, go to YouTube, just learn the basics. We don't expect you to make a high level schedule at the get-go, but we would just at least know, some of the verbiage that's used within the schedule. I would like to maybe the next time now dig into project and teach you about what a Gantt chart schedule is versus a calendar schedule. A lot of people can't read a Gantt chart schedule. I will tell you, a lot of times when we introduce this type of schedule to an operational team of a company, they're used to seeing a calendar. It confuses them. They see all those lines. They go, well, when is my cabinets coming? It's like, well, just go look at where's cabinets and find out when it's coming. But it's just your brain has been locked your whole life looking at a calendar. That's the month of December, and Christmas is on the 25th. But when you take that and spread it in bars, the only reason why you do that, so you can see how the time overlaps. And they call it critical path because there are certain aspects of a job that aren't really critical to the end. But there's other ones that are totally fatal, like, building the walls is fatal. You can't get the job done. But, your office furniture is not a critical path into the job. You just bring in some temp stuff. It's not critical. So there wouldn't be a link. There would not be a line to project completion that would run through furniture. I mean, it would, but we open up jobs all the time with partial delivery of a bunch of stuff. Then we go to Home Depot and we get folding tables and folding chairs. But that's the reason why you use a Gantt chart, is you can see the overlay of how tasks overlay in a period of time, as opposed to looking at a calendar. Calendar is great for like a 1 week look ahead. What's coming up next week? That's what's really powerful. A lot of times a customer will ask us, could you please give us a 2 week look ahead? I just want to know what's happening Monday to Friday of next week. That's really hard to pull out of a schedule like this. But you can actually, through the software,
change it to
you
calendar.
can change it this to a calendar and run a report on who does what and when. And I can actually just pull out Sam Ramaha for next week, and it will show what Sam's doing. So schedules, there's a whole bunch of ways to be digested, how you deliver it. But what I really like about what Procore does is that once I load the project schedule into Procore, it gives it the ability of your field person to be able to manipulate it through software he already has. So he doesn't have to be prolific at project. But if the paint's going to get delayed, he can go in there from his iPad and go, we're going to push it 2 days. That links to the submittal log. If Ashley has the paint drawdowns, the paint's getting approved by the owner, it all links. It all links together. So the more we start doing Procore is our future here. And we're just taking baby steps at it. And I know we can't take big bites of big chunks at it at a time. We're really looking at the directors, the PMs and PEs to get it operationally. And then the next is we'll look at finance. And when we get that all tied in, we'll be a well-oiled machine. Because we're doing things 2 times and 3 times still. And we're really working to eliminate that. It takes some time. So, any other questions? Those are great questions, by the way. Don't ever feel intimidated, by the way, about asking questions. I actually really love to answer them, and it does not make you look stupid. Listen, I tell you, I own half this company, and I'm pretty good at what I do, and I didn't learn any of this. So I actually was almost on my own for 10 years. So trust me, there is no stupid question ever. That's not a culture that we have here. Please raise your hand if you have anything that you would like to know. How about you, Cam? Any questions?
That's great.
Did you find that helpful, at least now understanding the fundamentals of what scheduling involves? Just kind of enlightened you a little bit more and not just focusing on course of construction? I mean, it's a big part of it. That's where that's the meat and potatoes, but there's a lot. I can see a lot of stress in Mike's face when David goes, we got another job, because it's not, executing it if I got the super is one thing. It's like, here we go, procurement, contracts. There's this whole thing that triggers